Hello everyone, this is your friend Naruto Nexus 2.0 and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto fall in love with Femme Kakashi after the Genin exam part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Hiruzen and two other shinobi stood outside of Kushina's chakra barrier, waiting impatiently for it to go down. They wanted to stand by the Hokage and help defeat the tailed beast, but even the venerable Sandaime could not break through the barrier. Whatever Kushina and Minato were doing, they were doing it alone. Sandaime-sama, there must be something we can do. One of the shinobi flanking him, a fellow Sarutobi, said in frustration. Not even the Yondaime can take the Kyuubi alone. We have to do something. The other said, clenching his fist in anger. Sarutobi understood their feelings as he shared them. There was a certain point that a battle would reach where events were out of your control that would affect the outcome. That situation was one of those events and they would have to deal with the aftermath. He knew Minato and Kushina and because of that he was afraid they would do something rash. They watched as the Kyuubi growled and struggled in the chains that held it. It was as if any moment it could break loose, as the idea of a tailed beast being held down by simple steel was hard to fathom. The chains were not made of steel though, it was Kushina's chakra, the Jinchuriki that had held Kyuubi back for the past 2 decades, she would not falter now. It was not long before an amazing thing happened, the 9 tails shrunk in size. The third had never seen anything like it. Before, it had towered over the treetops with ease, only bits of red fur and tips of its ears peeked out from the surrounding forest. What is going on in there? Minato, Kushina, Sarutobi muttered, the night was already bad enough. You have a son now, don't do anything rash. Sir, the barrier. They observed the bright chakra barrier start to break down, receding. They could no longer sense Kyuubi, nor could they see it. Regardless, they approached with caution as they made their way through the small forest and into the clearing. What they saw there would stay with them the rest of their lives. There the two parents lay near their child, positioned in such a way the Sandaime knew they had shielded the newborn. The blood from their grievous wounds soaked the bed where Naruto lay. Despite the situation, the child could still smile through its tears. A seal that adorned the little blonde's stomach quickly told Hiruzen what he did not want to know, but needed to. So that was your plan, Minato. You really were thinking with your head. Behind him the two shinobi were still trying to wrap their heads around the situation. There was little time to waste if the Sandaime wanted to control the situation. Rito. He turned to look at the Junin he had known since the boy was in academy. With such a delicate situation, the only ones he could trust were those closest. Go get the medical corps, they need to attend to the Yondaime and his wife. Even in death, the two still deserved the best the village could offer. Yes, Sandaime-sama. As soon as he left, Hiruzen turned to the other Sarutobi. His brow was covered in sweat from the previous battle and stress of the night. The forehead protector that adorned his head covered his slick brown hair, trimmed short. At least a head taller than Hiruzen, he was a loyal family member that the old man could trust. Shin. The young man pulled himself from the tragic scenery and looked at the former Hokage, waiting for orders. Yes, Hiruzen-sama. If the truth escaped about Naruto then nothing good could come of it for the boy. We need to get Naruto out of here. Can I entrust that to you? They looked at the little boy who had stopped laughing and now, more appropriately, was crying. Most likely, he missed his parents' touch. Naruto. You mean this boy? Very few had been made privileged to Kushina's pregnancy, let alone the name chosen for the child. Yes. With Kyuubi sealed inside of him, he is the new Jinchuriki. Not only that but Minato's enemies might take this opportunity to harm him. We need to keep him safe and his identity secret. Shin said nothing but nodded. The situation was grave and, although he didn't understand the full gravity of it, he knew the innocent child did not deserve whatever fate had in store for him. If there was something he could do to help then he would do it. I understand. Where shall I take him? Hiruzen approached the altar and gathered Naruto up in the bedcloth. With no small amount of care, as if the child was made of glass, he gave him to Shin. Accepting him into his arms, the young Sarutobi waited for further orders. To my home. Once the crisis has been properly dealt with Asuma and I will return and take care of him. Please, watch over him until then. With my life, Hiruzen-sama. He leapt away with the bundle held close to his chest, leaving nothing but a shadow in his stead. Trusting that they would arrive safely, Hiruzen turned to look over the two fallen heroes. With a heavy heart he shifted them so that both lay on their backs. In that way he hoped they would be a bit more at ease. Despite himself, Sarutobi could not help but let loose a few tears as he gazed upon their faces. Even until the end, both of you. The two proud parents wore their smiles with pride. They died just as they had lived, together and happy. 000. Kanahagakure. Hiruzen's home. 000. Just as was ordered of him, Shin stood near the bedside where he had let Naruto lay. He waited for Hiruzen and his son to return home. Amazingly, the trip had been without incident and no one attempted to stop him. For that he was thankful. He would rather not have to do any more fighting that night. Too many of his friends had been lost, too much blood had been spilled in the streets for him to lift his kunai to another. Despite everything Shin knew about children, he could not understand the young Namikaze. When he should have been crying and thrashing in his sleep, Naruto remained quiet their entire trip. Indeed, the infant was smiling as he lay comfortably on the bed. It seems he has inherited his mother's cheerfulness. Although he did not know her well, Shin had encountered Kushina on occasion. A bit odd, the woman always seemed to have something to smile about. He realized now that it was a blessing she had bestowed upon her child. It would be interesting to see whom the child would resemble more, the Yondaime or his wife. The door to the home opened and Shin heard two people enter. Both were talking very loudly so he did not have to strain himself much to hear. It seemed Hiruzen's youngest son was arguing about something with his father. Why did you ask me to come back here? We still don't know what happened to mother. Asuma, please. There are shinobi everywhere trying to track down your mother and the rest of those who are missing. Right now I need your help with something. The exasperated elder was clearly having trouble keeping his son under control, understandably. From what Shin understood, she was one of the closest confidants during the pregnancy. Bawako must have fallen victim to whatever plot released the Nine Tails. It was a loss that would be hard for any of the Sarutobi to recuperate from, let alone her youngest son. What could possibly be more important than? The bedroom door opened and the dark room was illuminated by the hallway light. Shin bowed in respect as Hiruzen and Asuma entered, their eyes on the bright blonde baby. Hiruzen-sama. Well done, Shin, thank you. With that, the guardian excused himself. Surely he had friends and family he needed to attend to. Asuma did not understand what was going on and looked to his father for guidance. Who was this kid? He did not look like a Sarutobi with his bright blonde hair and whisker marks. This is what I need your help with. What I am about to tell you cannot leave this room, do you understand? His son nodded slowly, dumbfounded by the situation. From now on, this child will be your younger brother. It will be up to you to teach him what it means to be a shinobi and to watch out for him. Hiruzen knew he was asking a lot from Asuma. His wife he was afraid was surely deceased and that kind of impact would hurt their family greatly. There was no doubt that their strength and loyalty would be tried as they juggled rebuilding the village and caring for Naruto. There was one thing that the seasoned shinobi knew though, and that was that they could not allow the Yondaime's sacrifice to be in vain. If there was any other way, Hiruzen knew that Minato would not have sealed the Kyuubi inside of Naruto. Whatever plan he came up with, it was their duty to make sure it was carried out to the end. 2-san. I know I said that having a little brother would be nice, but this is the Yondaime's kid, right? Shouldn't they be? Hiruzen looked at his son. His face told him why that sentence should not be finished. So that was the price Konoha had to pay in order to defeat the Nine Tails. This child was their legacy now. What kind of guy would he be if he refused? The older Sarutobi watched as his son's face hardened into what he knew was determination. He placed his hand on Asuma's shoulder and silently thanked him. We will talk more about this in the morning. For now, I want you to stay with Naruto while I organize the search efforts. With his father gone, Asuma was unsure of what to do. Alone with Naruto, his strength and earlier confidence was sapped. He knew next to nothing about babies, being the youngest of the Sarutobi. Holding back a sigh, the now older brother unzipped his flak vest as he made his way to Naruto. Gently, he sat next to his sleeping form in an effort not to wake him. Unsure of what to say, he just watched Naruto's little chest go up and down in tune to his breathing. Hey, little guy, he scratched his head, trying to alleviate the awkwardness. Guess I'm your big brother now. Not sure exactly what I have to do, but I promise I'll do my best. Naruto stirred and Asuma was unsure of what to do. When he did not cry, Asuma figured that maybe his voice was keeping him calm. True or not, it was incentive enough for him to continue. Maybe this is not the best time to introduce myself, but I'm Asuma Sarutobi. Nice to meet you, Odoto. As a joke, he held out his hand above Naruto, for him to shake. It worked as Naruto let loose a high-pitched giggle, breaking the tense atmosphere. The Chunin was thrown for a loop when Naruto reached up with his little hand and gripped one of his fingers, completing the shake. Always one to adapt to the situation, Asuma smiled and finished the shake by gently holding Naruto's hand in his own. You and I will get along just fine, I think. 000. A few weeks later. Hiruzen's home. 000. No Kurenai, wait up. Now is not the time for secrets, Asuma. The young Chunin raced to the front door of the Sarutobi residence. Hiruzen was taken aback as Kurenai, one of Asuma's closest female friends, came bursting through the door with an out-of-breath Asuma not far behind. Sorry too, San. The teen tried to catch his breath. But she was too fast. Kurenai was not known for her rebellious nature, at least to those who weren't her father, and she quickly bowed to the Hokage. She was not prone to such outbursts of energy as she generally preferred a calm, methodical approach to problems. But Asuma had been too frustrating and tight-lipped about whatever was happening at home, having to skip their lunches early, shopping for little kid clothes. Her intuition told her something was off. My apologies, Hokage-sama. But I would like to ask you a question. Hiruzen already had a sneaking suspicion of what it was, and he began to wonder if he could turn this in his favor. Since the aftermath of the Kyuubi's attack, he had returned to his place as Sandaime Hokage. In that time, both he and Asuma had been busy ensuring the village at least appeared normal to outside eyes. He picked up the slack in paperwork as quickly as he could, and Asuma went on the great many missions that were piling up, their clientele having no idea that Konoha's ninja strength had been halved. In that time, just as Hiruzen had predicted, their attention was forced from Naruto. In the time he needed them the most, they could barely afford the time to care for his basic needs. Perhaps if they had a woman's help, even that of young Kurenai, they could begin to properly support Naruto's growth. Go on. The old man gestured for her to continue, his hands clasped in front of him as he sat at the kitchen table. Has Asuma been seeing anyone recently? Both of the Sarutobi were put off by that question, as it was a very intimate way of asking about a child. Kurenai, what is that supposed to mean? Asuma harshly whispered in her ear, but he was ignored. Not that I know of. Why do you ask? He responded with an innocent smile. It was cute to see the younger generation handle their love problems without even realizing it. It's just that Asuma has been leaving early from all of our meetings. I even saw him. The girl was clearly embarrassed to say something, buying baby clothes. So I thought that. Hiruzen held up a hand, barely holding back a chuckle. He had heard enough, and his son was plenty red in the face. It was time to salvage the situation. We have a baby in our home, that is why Asuma has been so busy. You see, he is now the older brother and has to take care of him when I can't. Kurenai's eyes widened in understanding. She had been right that something had happened. She thanked the Hokage for telling her and, as an afterthought, mumbled an apology to the still-red Asuma. As if on cue, Naruto began to cry. Asuma cursed under his breath and ran to check on him with Kurenai following behind, curious. They entered the makeshift baby room, a hastily converted guest bedroom with Asuma's old crib and toys laying about. Naruto must have heard the shouting and was showing his dissatisfaction. The two shinobi stood over him, looking down at his frowning face. As the older brother, Asuma did his best to calm him down by talking, but it was doing no good. Kurenai had been ensnared by Naruto's cuteness, at first unable to respond. Pushing the clueless boy aside, she gently took the infant in her arms and cradled him close to her chest. Hiruzen watched from the doorway as Kurenai rocked him back and forth back to sleep. The two men were amazed when the boy stopped crying and started to smile. Fascinated by her long hair, the blonde twirled it around in his fingers as he fell into a deep sleep. Asuma could not help but blush at how Kurenai easily handled the baby. She made it look so easy when he was clueless. More so, she even seemed happy dealing with the crying child. Nicely done, Kurenai-san. Awoken from her stupor, she turned to see the Hokage watching her. She did an impromptu bow in thanks, unsure of what came over her. It just felt natural to hold him in her arms for whatever reason. Kurenai. You are amazing. Asuma whispered, making the girl blush. It is nothing, really. She tried to assure the both of them, still holding Naruto close. Perhaps it is not my place to ask something like this of you, Kurenai-san, but Asuma and I would appreciate any help you can give us. We are trying to take care of him without help, but it is too much for the both of us. With a woman's touch perhaps. You could do more good than we can. Kurenai had no reason to accept other than it being a request from the Hokage. She was not even sure who the baby's parents were, or what his name was. That much work coming to see him every day would surely tire her out. But he was cute, she had to admit. Any girl would fall for those whisker marks and bright blonde hair. Blonde hair. Her eyes widened. Suddenly she had a better hunch of who that baby belonged to. There was no need to say so though, as she assumed that his presence there was some sort of secret. As if to acknowledge what she just figured out, Hiruzen approached her. He placed a heavy hand on her shoulder, making her look up at him with her crimson eyes. They needed to make sure she understood the situation. It goes without saying that we have been trying to keep him secret. We would both appreciate it if you did the same. If the wrong people discovered that he existed, there would be trouble. Kurenai nodded, understanding somewhat. The Yondaime was a great man, but even he had his enemies. Looking at him again, she had to ask herself what kind of person could want to harm this little one. I'll do what I can, Hokage-sama. But can I ask a question? Of course. She looked back down at the young child that slept in her arms. He seemed so peaceful now. There was just one thing she needed to know before she signed up for the task. What is his name? Hiruzen and Asuma both breathed a silent sigh of relief and smiled. With a bit of pride only a grandparent could give, he announced the name of the village's future hero. Naruto Uzumaki. 000. Konohagakure. Ninja Academy. 000. Are you sure about this, Asuma ni? It's finally time for you to get out of the house and go to school, Naruto. San and I both agree on it. Asuma and Naruto stood in front of the school gates as the first day of academy was starting. The new students were all saying goodbye to their parents and heading inside. There were a few like Naruto who were apprehensive, but they were soon dragged along by friends. Unfortunately, Naruto didn't have anyone like that, so it was up to his older brother to get him inside. But why do I have to leave? You need to grow up to be a shinobi like me and San. They will teach you how. He gestured toward the instructors who were welcoming the children by the entrance. Why can't you? Asuma laughed and got down on one knee to be at equal height with the young Jinchuriki. Naruto was sporting a simple black top with beige shorts, his blonde hair still spiky and free. He had done a lot of growing up the past few years with Kurenai and Asuma watching over him. Really, it was amazing the progress he had made, but he was doomed to stay an introvert if they left him at home. Naruto needed to meet people and have a solid training foundation before Asuma was willing to keep him all to himself. His father had appointed the older brother in charge of Naruto's training outside of the academy, and honestly, Asuma could not wait to teach him what he knew. But if it was for Naruto's sake, he could wait. These guys are much better teachers than I am, besides, here you can make friends your age. Naruto still did not seem convinced, so Asuma tried something different. He untied his headband protector and held it close to Naruto's face for him to see. It was the symbol of graduation, proof that a person was finally ready to start down the path of shinobi. Everyone who met Naruto knew how he secretly coveted it, how much he wanted wear one himself. If you want to have one of these for yourself, hurry up and pass all the tests they give you. If you can do that, then I promise I will teach you everything I know. How about that? Naruto gave him a skeptical look, raising an eyebrow. Even at the age of 5, Naruto was becoming a shrewd negotiator. All I have to do is pass their tests, then we can train together. Asuma nodded, and Naruto smiled. Without warning, he turned around and started running for the academy. He called out behind him, getting his older brother's attention. Hold on to that for me. It'll be mine soon. Asuma looked at his forehead protector and laughed, watching Naruto enter with a smile. That wasn't so hard, he thought as he retied the band around his head. He headed out to tell the Hokage that Naruto made it there safely. After that, maybe he would find Kurenai and see if she was willing to pick the little guy up from his first day of school. 000. Konohagakure. Hiruzen's home. 000. Naruto sat on the edge of his bed, shifting uncomfortably in response to the yelling happening outside. It had been like that for the past few weeks, even the most insignificant conversation could set them off. Throughout it all, the blonde had no idea what to do or say, so he just stayed in his room. Asuma and Hiruzen were in the middle of a shouting match over what to do about Bawako and her killers. Although they had known since shortly after Naruto's birth she had died during Kyuubi's attack, it was only until recently that information was found that implicated certain shinobi in the orchestrated attack. Hiruzen sought a cautious approach to the situation as the information was in no way reliable. Asuma, on the other hand, believed that they should follow it up aggressively. He wanted to get those bastards back for what they had done to his mother, to his village. This was the first time they had a major disagreement with each other, and it was tearing their family apart. How can you just sit there and let them get away with what they did? They are right there in front of us. This village can't afford to go on another witch hunt. Asuma, not after the Uchiha. Hiruzen referred to the blame placed on Uchiha for the Kyuubi attack, which had since been found to be false. That didn't stop the growing animosity between the Uchiha and the village, but that was a different argument entirely. His son wanted to divert resources from something he truly believed to be nothing more than a wild goose chase. What if it is true? Are you willing to let my mother's murderers go free? Asuma was enraged that the village was forsaking his family just to keep up the illusion of peace. Bawako was my wife and I love her dearly. But I will not waste lives just to discover the truth behind a rumor. Your mother wouldn't want that. Naruto began to cry as the yelling got louder and the argument grew. A cold draft fell over the room as the window was opened and a slender figure entered. She had gotten used to making quiet entrances since those terrible arguments began. Kurenai sat next to Naruto and wrapped him in her arms, trying her best to comfort him. She knew that, regardless of whether it was their business or not, the fights were hurting others close to the Sarutobi. Not even she was immune to it, and she feared today would be Asuma's breaking point. That was why she came, to make sure Naruto didn't do anything rash. Naruto had done everything right, just like his brother said to. He graduated at the top of his class only a year after entering the academy. Soon after, Asuma started to train him with Kurenai and Hiruzen supporting him. Everything had been going fine until that so-called evidence turned up. She stood with the Hokage. It was too rash to run off and try to act on the second-hand information. But Asuma was stubborn. His feelings had been pent up since the day of the attack. His mind was waiting for a moment like this to let everything out. Now his family and friends were on the receiving end. What do we do, Kurenai-ne-chan? Naruto asked her. The headband he inherited from Asuma covered his tear-stained eyes. There isn't anything we can do, Naruto-kun. She told him sadly. The worst thing they could do is get in between the two Sarutobi. They continued to hold each other as Asuma loudly declared he was leaving and slammed the front door shut. The house became deathly silent as Hiruzen must have tried to collect himself from the argument. I thought that everything would go back to normal. Why is Asuma leaving? Naruto rocked himself, crying into Kurenai's bosom. They were supposed to train today. Then they were going to go out to lunch with Kurenai and Anko. That night the Sarutobis were going to see their new nephew and grandson, Konohamaru. Why did it have to turn out like that? Kurenai was at a loss for words, still trying to come to grips with the situation herself. As tears came to her eyes, she could only hold on to Naruto tighter. Their relationship had grown incredibly close the past few years since he became a genin. Naruto was like a younger brother to her, and that was why she could not stand to see him cry. I'm sorry, Naruto-kun. I don't know either. It hurt her to be at such a loss for words, but even she couldn't fathom why Asuma was willing to leave everything behind just for some vendetta. 000. Konohagakure. North Gate. 000. Naruto and Kurenai waited with bated breath as a lone figure walked down the road. Just a few days ago they received word that Asuma was returning home from his journey. Both made sure they had time to prepare for his arrival, both by putting it into their busy schedules and by thinking of what to say. Here he comes, Kurenai said with a little bit of annoyance, like a mother waiting to greet a son who stayed out late. He looks like a mess. Naruto said matter-of-factly. As the man got closer, it was clear he had not received a proper haircut or shave in a while. Not only that, but he looked out of place without his flak vest and headband. It was at that point that both of them would use the term bum to describe Asuma, although they would never admit it. Lucky for him, the village had been thriving even with his absence. Naruto and Kurenai both had been doing well by using each other as support. With Hiruzen's encouragement, Naruto even got to go on a few missions with Kurenai to keep his skills sharp. Due to Naruto's sensitive position, he was left out of a genin squad. The third had something special planned for him, Kurenai assumed. With Asuma's return, perhaps that plan would come to fruition. Hey guys. Asuma addressed his small welcoming party, glad to see them. Just now noticing how close he was, the two struggled to find the right words. Naruto recovered first and, with little warning, punched Asuma hard in the gut. He remembered how Kurenai and even Hiruzen had said they wanted to knock some sense into Asuma while he was away, and he figured he would do it for all three of them. The power behind the punch was enough to make the older ninja double over, the air ripped from his lungs. It also served to wake up Kurenai, who had to fight herself from going to help him. She had to stay angry, if nothing else for herself. That was for making Kurenai cry. Naruto, now 11, had outgrown his cute brother and sister titles he had given the both of them. Even then, he still had his trademark smile. Naruto couldn't stay angry for long as he helped Asuma up with the strength he had been developing from his individual training. He was truly becoming a powerful shinobi. Remind me. Asuma took a deep breath, hands on his knees. Never to do that again. He looked at the woman in question and saw her in her usual angry stance, arms crossed, red eyes locked on target. As usual, he thought that he be the object of it. This time he rightfully deserved it for leaving them. Hello Kurenai. She just gave him a nasty look before walking off, the cold shoulder making him feel absolutely frozen. Well, guess I did deserve that punch. Don't worry, Kurenai is always like that when she is angry. Naruto seemed to know this as well as he did. Within the next few days she would be back to normal. Yeah, that would be our Kurenai. Asuma looked at Naruto and saw him starting to dress more properly for his age. Naruto was wearing one of Asuma's dark blue long-sleeve shirts and a pair of blue pants with his black sandals. All that was missing was his flak vest. Asuma wondered if he had been promoted yet. The red swirls of the Uzumaki proudly adorned his shoulders, although he might have been none the wiser to their significance. Hiruzen said that until Naruto was ready to take up his parents' mantle, they could not tell him the truth. For now they had played a game of cat and mouse with Naruto's questions that kept him guessing. If they were not careful in how they answered, the young boy could get the wrong idea about his heritage that they might never be able to fix. If they told him too early, the responsibility would be too much for him to handle. Come on, the Hokage said he wanted to see you. Naruto led him to the large red building in the center of town. Asuma shouldered his pack of belongings before following behind. Although he hadn't been gone for more than a few years, the village felt so different. Maybe the trip gave him a new appreciation for the tranquil effect it seemed to have on him. Not a day went by that he did not think of his family in Konoha when he left. He almost immediately regretted leaving, but his stubborn pride refused to allow him to return until he accomplished something. The rumors of his mother's killers turned up with nothing and he was left wandering the countryside. That was until he received an invitation to join the 12 guardian ninjas of the Fire Daimyo, who had heard of his previous exploits in the village. He learned and experienced a great many things while in service of the daimyo. Possibly the most important one was appreciation, whether it be people, objects, or feelings. To be able to have any of those things should be enough for anyone. The trip also taught him what betrayal felt like to be on the receiving end. He wondered if his father felt something of what he felt when they had their last argument and Asuma walked out. They entered the red building after receiving some hellos. Most still didn't recognize Asuma with how he looked. There was a moment when the man wanted to rush out and get a haircut and change into something more proper, but then he realized that his father wanted to see him immediately for a reason. He wanted to know what this trip had done for him, and to him. Come in. Naruto had already knocked on the door to Hiruzen's office, giving Asuma little time to prepare. They entered quickly to find the elder Sarutobi hard at work with paperwork, as usual. There was little rest for the Hokage even in peacetime. Even with his son returning from absence for the past 3 years, the Hokage would not afford himself a break. Ah, Naruto-kun, I see your mission was successful. Naruto bowed to the Hokage and then moved out of the way to present Asuma. Yes, I picked him up just like you asked. That was a mission, sneaky little. Just when he thought his little brother was nice enough to make time for him, Asuma watched as the blonde received his payment for the completed mission. Perfect. Now I can treat Kurenai tonight. Hiruzen smiled, glad to see Naruto was not letting himself stray even when Asuma returned. They all needed to show Asuma that the world continued to revolve, with or without him. Just when Naruto was about to dismiss himself, Hiruzen stopped him. Wait a minute Naruto, what I have to say to Asuma affects you as well. Suddenly his good mood soured as Naruto took his place next to his older brother. Taking the moment of silence as his chance, Asuma bowed deeply. I'm very sorry father. I made a bad judgment when I chose to follow my emotions rather than your advice. Please forgive me. The room remained silent as they gauged the other's reaction. Would his father cave or would Asuma realize his apology would not work? Who was right and who was wrong does not concern me now, Asuma. What concerns me is your brash decision to leave the village, against orders. We will discuss that later. However, as I assume you will be rejoining the regular forces. Hiruzen sought to steer the conversation and Asuma was more than willing to let him. Yes, if you would allow it. With a nod to Naruto, Hiruzen gave an important signal. From Naruto's waist pouch, he pulled out a very important forehead protector he had been taking care of since Asuma's leave. Thrown to the ground inside of the Sarutobi's home in anger, Naruto had since restored it to its former sheen. They had been waiting to give it back to him and this seemed like the perfect moment to do so. Asuma took it gratefully, marveling in it for a moment before tying it tightly around his forehead. With that out of the way, Hiruzen brought up the most important part of the meeting. It had to do with Naruto's progression as a ninja and how it was in danger of failing. Asuma, as you know, Naruto is the Nine Tails Jinchuriki. Shortly after he came into the Sarutobi family, Asuma was made aware, he was reminded during their early training sessions for safety concerns. This has led the council to being careful in how they allow him to progress as a shinobi. Because of the importance the Jinchuriki holds in a village's military power, the Hokage could not make decisions involving it alone. That left the council with a certain amount of power to better control Naruto as they saw fit. Much of the pressure was no doubt from Danzo attempting to keep the blonde from becoming too powerful or influential in the village's processes. Asuma had feared something like that might happen, but he had hoped Hiruzen would be able to close off their protests. It seemed as though it was impossible for him to do alone though. Now that you have returned, I can finally start moving forward with Naruto's training. I am going to put him under your tutelage and, because your rank is already Junin, there should be no trouble you taking him on missions. These missions will count toward Naruto's mission count and gain him valuable experience. Eventually, we should be able to work out a way for him to become a Chunin, depending on how well you two work together. Asuma nodded, he was willing to do whatever it took to get his younger brother where he deserved to be. It was the least he could do for missing out on some of the most important years of his life. The Hokage turned to Naruto who had been silently listening to the conversation, having already been made aware of the political machinations of the council in previous meetings. Naruto was more mature than the council suspected, no doubt shown in his amazing progress as a shinobi and the robust schedule he had created for himself. Juggling his social life with the older ninja like Kurenai, Anko, and Shin with his training was more than most his age could attest to. I want you to know, Naruto, that the reason I am trying so hard to have you receive this promotion is not some emotion or favoritism. You have great potential and you deserve a chance to be a shinobi this village can count on, regardless of what the council thinks. I understand, Hokage-sama. Thank you. Naruto bowed, truly grateful. Every day he saw how politics of the village wore on his grandfather. Sometimes he blamed himself for it, only to be scolded by Hiruzen. None of it was Naruto's fault, if anything it was his own for not being able to reel in Danzo from his political schemes. After this, be sure to get yourself cleaned up. You are representing Konoha again, you know. Naruto stifled a laugh and Asuma agreed. They were dismissed for the rest of the day, allowing the two brothers to once again be with one another. With one arm around the blonde's shoulder, Asuma promised that day was the start of something great. Maybe he was right. 000. Shortly after the two left Hiruzen's office, another figure appeared for an audience. They had a slender figure, covered with gray armor and tight black cloth. Their face was covered by a porcelain mask that took the shape of a dog, red and black markings running along the face and eyes. Long silver hair reached down the middle of their back, with a few strands that fell idle over the left side of her face. The Anbu did not wait to be addressed before beginning to speak. They knew each other well enough to know how to speak comfortably. Even then, her place required her to be as formal as possible when speaking to the Hokage. You wished to see me, Hokage-sama. Her light, dull voice easily betrayed her boredom. Not even the Anbu were immune from long breaks between missions, especially so considering the work they had to do. She had joined the prestigious organization at a young age to try and lose herself in the work, to forget about the war. It worked, for a time at least, but even Anbu could not escape their past. Still, she was doing good work for the village, so she pressed on. Yes, Inu, I have a new mission for you. She waited for the details, another tracking and assassination of a missing nin. There seemed to be more and more of those since the Uchiha clan's destruction. Whether they feared for their own lives or decided the village had changed in some way they did not like, she did not know. However, there was no escape from her ninkin. Understood, we will begin immediately. The Anbu turned to leave. Hiruzen asked her to wait a moment as he had something else to ask her. That was not usual in their conversations, they were generally very businesslike. Inu, remove your mask. With a bit of hesitation, she complied. With the animal mask off, her soft and well-defined face was on rare display. It was one of the few times she did not have her face mask up, as she had just finished eating and was not expecting to have to show her face. A long scar ran down her closed left eye where the Sharingan was implanted, but it had stopped bothering her a long time ago. Her soft, pink lips remained in an unamused frown and her right eye likewise stayed half closed. Even if she was totally revealed, her cool demeanor still remained. Kakashi. He finally used her real name, something she rarely heard during her time in the ANBU. Have you given any thought to retiring from the Anbu? That was an odd question that the Sandame had not asked her before. She wondered what his interest was, as she had nothing but a stellar record during her tenure in the organization. Had she done something wrong? He quickly sought to remedy her confusion by following up his original question with a proper explanation. You see, a new batch of Genin is being prepared by the academy as we speak. I can't, Hokage-sama. Hiruzen sighed. He was afraid she would respond like that. It seemed she was still not ready to face the responsibility of handling Genin of her own. Until she handled that familiar sense of failure she garnered during the war with the loss of her teammates, Kakashi would continue to feel the Anbu were her only safe haven. In truth, taking on a squad of Genin would probably be her best therapy. Very well, Kakashi, I won't push you. Return to your duties. Yes, Hokage-sama. She pulled the cloth mask up over her face, followed by the porcelain one. Inu returned, then bowed, and proceeded to leave without another word. Her partner, Tenzo, leaned against the wall waiting for her to get done. It had taken a surprisingly long amount of time, which was unusual, but their masks prevented any obvious emotion from being portrayed. Anything wrong, Senpai? No, the mission details took longer than expected. Let's go. They disappeared in a blur to make preparations. Kakashi was still on the run from her past, but how long would it take before it came back to bite her? 000. Yuki no Kuni. Kazuhana Castle. 000. Kakashi made her way through the long, lavish hallways of the Kazuhana family estate. She had been summoned by the daimyo, Saozutsu Kazuhana. It was her guess that he wanted to thank her for the work she had done, as her mission would soon come to an end. As a military advisor from Konoha, it had been Kakashi's duty the past year or so to train the Yuki ninja in an effort to strengthen relations between the two villages. They had been surprisingly receptive, adapting traditional methodology to modern shinobi techniques that only a major village like Konoha could have experience in. Another mission that would go off without a hitch, it would seem. Because of the sensitive nature of the mission as well as the pacifistic nature of the objectives, she was sent alone. Though she thought little of it during her mission briefing, in the event of an attack she would be at a disadvantage. She had already examined the shinobi of Yuki and was thoroughly unimpressed. Even with her training they received, she knew that none of them would be a considerable threat to her. That was why in that past year, while she had been staying in Kazuhana Castle, she had allowed a fraction of her guard to fall. She would sorely reprimand herself for this later in life. Kakashi passed a few maids making their way to Koyuki Kazuhana's room, the heir to the throne. They did not interact much, but the silver-haired shinobi had answered a few of her questions about Konoha. She seemed amazed to hear about the seasons of spring and summer, where trees had green leaves growing from them. Shortly after, she entered into the throne room through a large set of wooden doors that required 2 men to open. Inside lay the throne room where, on the other side of the room and up a flight of stairs, lay a platform where the throne sat with Saozutsu occupying it. The Anbu walked forward until she was at the steps where she bowed in respect. The man adjusted his glasses and smiled, happy to see her. It was bittersweet as he knew her time staying with the family had come to an end, but it was always pleasure to meet someone new. You may rise, Kakashi, I've told you that before. She rose from the bow, slightly adjusting the dog mask. Apologies, Kazuhana-sama. Somehow he questioned whether she meant that, but he ignored it. I just wanted to thank you for your work, as well as ask you to send the same thanks to your leaders in Konoha. We could not have made it this far without you. I will be sure to do that, Kazuhana-sama. Before she could be excused, a messenger came rushing into the room. He bowed deeply for disturbing, but whatever was happening, it was too important to wait. The old man seemed white as a ghost and he tripped over his words so much that Saozutsu had to ask him to start over. My lord. The castle. It is under siege. The daimyo immediately rose from his seat, in shock. Kakashi had an outward appearance of calm as she stood there, waiting for more information. Inside she was not entirely too concerned. What worried her the most is that she never picked up on the intent of whoever dared to attack the castle. Her enhanced hearing allowed her to listen to samurai and staff run through the halls, preparing to meet the threat. What? Who dares to? Behind them, the door slammed open and the body of a samurai came launching toward them. Kakashi angled her head out of the way as the body sailed past, making a wet crunch against the stairs. 3 ninja entered the room, all equipped with the experimental chakra armor Kakashi had the privilege to try out for herself. Unfortunately, it looked a lot more sophisticated since the last time she saw it. Their leader was one she recognized, a prominent Yuki ninja by the name of Nadare Ruga. His long, lavender hair was tied into a ponytail and his pupil-less teal eyes stared at her with a hungry tint. She had avoided his pitiful advances since the beginning and she assumed his frustration would be enough to give up, apparently not. Saozutsu Kazuhana and the infamous Kakashi Hatake, just the 2 people I wanted to see. He said in an arrogant tone, as if he already had control of the situation. Saozutsu knew the shinobi and already had a sneaking suspicion of where his loyalties lied. His concern was elsewhere, for his daughter. Kakashi, please get my daughter out of the castle. The daimyo pleaded as Kakashi got into a fighting stance, knees bent and hand on her tanto sword. I will handle these intruders, Kazuhana-sama. Please escape while I do. Underneath her mask, Kakashi released the Sharingan. The 2 shinobi on Nadare's flanks, a woman with pink hair and a large man with dark pupils, launched forward in an attempt to kill the daimyo. Kakashi launched forward in a blur, faster than any of them could see. Her image reappeared behind both of them in midair, her sword had already swung. Both the enemy shinobi saw cuts over their chest and fell to the ground, clutching themselves in pain. Nadare revealed his own kunai and met Kakashi in close combat. Inches from each other as their blades met and sparked, the disgusting man mocked her by sniffing her hair. Ah, what a wonderful scent you have, Kakashi. She overpowered his defense and prepared to slice through his armor, but an attack on her flank forced her to turn. Mizor had launched his metal arm at her, hitting her right in the face. It sent her flying back and into the stone wall, punishment for letting her guard down. Her dog mask shattered, revealing her red Sharingan eye tracking the 3 enemy shinobi, her mind already working on a counter. A cornered animal is the most dangerous, be careful. Ruga said as they approached to finish her off. The Kakashi in the wall exploded in a cloud of smoke, revealing it to be a trick. A series of smoke bombs dropped onto the ground from the ceiling, preventing them from seeing. In quick succession, Kakashi used pinpoint taijutsu strikes to bypass the chakra armor of Nadare's comrades and knock them unconscious. Before she could reach Nadare, the fire spread to their part of the building and more Yuki shinobi appeared. Kakashi knew there were too many even for her to handle easily. She leapt over Nadare's head, launching her leg back down where she slammed the back of her foot against his head. While he was dazed, she landed and sliced her way through the ninja guarding the entrance. Remembering Koyuki, she ran in the direction of her room. On her way she passed many bodies of servants she had learned the names of over the past year. She hoped Saozutsu was able to escape, but as the blood and fire followed her, that hope shrunk. With the sound of enemy ninja close behind, Kakashi slammed through the door that led to the princess's room. She stood there, alone in front of a vanity mirror. As Kakashi went to grab her, the man-made fire spread to the door and started to envelop the room, frightening the poor girl who saw the reflection in the mirror. The shouts behind Kakashi grew louder as she whisked the girl into her arms, the sword on her back preventing a piggyback. Hang on tight and close your eyes. Kakashi shifted her onto one arm and reached into her waist pouch for shuriken. There they are, get them. Nadare's voice came from the door, but it was too late. Kakashi dashed forward toward a large window, throwing a few shuriken to weaken the glass. With a less than graceful crash through the makeshift exit, the two girls were outside and running for their lives across the castle rooftop. Fire was everywhere, forcing the Anbu to watch her step. Screams and sounds of battle echoed all around, but she pressed on with her precious cargo. Once they escaped the compound, Kakashi used the shadows to avoid the Yuki patrols. They were catching any who tried to escape, generally executing them on the spot. With a bit of work she was able to find a dog sled often used for travel in the region and placed Koyuki onto the back. She held up a gloved finger to her masked lips, signifying the girl stay quiet. Not waiting for a response, Kakashi covered her the best she could with a beige tarp generally used to hold down cargo. As soon as she got the dogs awaken up, she began to use the reins to control them. Oi! Who's over there? Kakashi looked over her shoulder and realized that even with the blizzard overtaking the mountain palace, the Yuki shinobi were able to see their shadows. There was no time to eliminate them, she had to escape now. Let's go. Kakashi shouted to the dogs, and that got them moving with a harsh jerking of their collars, shooting off for a nearby mountain pass. Behind them, the trailing Yuki shinobi became small shadows in a larger orange haze. Kazuhana Castle was burning to the ground. As much as Kakashi wanted to say someone had escaped alive other than them, she doubted it. Koyuki could wait no longer and looked up from her hiding place after realizing they were moving. She looked up and saw her once beautiful home now on fire, her father still inside. The situation was too dire for Kakashi to gather her coat, so she was forced to keep her upper body moving for warmth. When she looked behind to check their progress, she noticed Koyuki sobbing. What are you doing? Cover yourself, Kakashi said harshly as the girl again let the tarp fall over her, albeit slowly. She must be experiencing shock. Poor girl. Kakashi bit back her emotions. She had to remain calm if she wanted to escape the country safely. Konoha would not be happy to hear about the failure of her mission. Kakashi realized that she still could not protect anyone with her own hands. 000. Konohagakure. Hokage's office. 000. Congratulations on another completed mission, you two. Asuma and Naruto informally bowed for Hiruzen's compliment. All in a day's work. The Junin said nonchalantly, scratching his growing facial hair. The 14-year-old next to him just nodded. The mission had not been as difficult as the commissioner made it out to be, just a few bandits to get rid of on his property. Asuma had been nice enough to let Naruto do most of the work. It was a nice exercise for his muscles. Naruto was still a genin, but Hiruzen said that with the next group of genin approaching, they offered a special opportunity. Neither of the duo were sure what he meant by special opportunity, but it was more than he had heard in the past 3 years in way of news toward his promotion. It was not that Naruto was seeking prestige or glory. He honestly was bored and felt like he could be doing a lot more for the village, like Asuma or Kurenai. He could only leave when there was a Junin available to go out on a mission with, and they had to be a Junin the Hokage trusted. That left him with Asuma, Kurenai, and occasionally Shin Sarutobi. Although he had completed hundreds of missions since he became a genin, very few of them were more than simple chores. I will see you two later tonight, you are dismissed. The Sarutobi exited the room, allowing for the next appointment to enter. In this case, a dog-faced Anbu knelt in front of the table. She waited to be addressed as Hiruzen pondered the unexpected arrival. Inu, I wasn't expecting you. Yes, Hokage-sama, I have something I want to discuss with you. Kakashi seemed uncomfortable about something, so he gestured. She continue. I have given serious consideration to your offer of rejoining the regular forces. With help, I have come to realize that I am doing an injustice by not becoming an instructor for the future genin. Sarutobi was surprised to hear Kakashi humble herself before him. Since joining the Anbu, she had always kept up a cool, emotionless exterior in an attempt to hide her true feelings. It seemed something finally happened to change her mind. He could not say he was displeased with this announcement, however, as he knew she would make a great teacher. If that is what you want, Kakashi, you may rejoin immediately. Come to me tomorrow for your first assignment. I have genin from the remedial class that are about to graduate that could use your overview. Hiruzen sought the right term for Kakashi's test. He knew she would find the best way to handle it. Very well, Hokage-sama. She hesitantly grabbed and removed her porcelain mask, returning it to the Hokage. In its place, she retied her headband over her left eye. Relatively unobstructed, her long silver bangs fell lazily to her left side, partially covering the protector. Thank you. She bowed and then disappeared in a blur. Hiruzen waited a moment and then nodded to himself. He made the right decision after all. The answer he wanted was in her change of tone. Kakashi was already changing back to her old self, emotions she forced herself to hide resurfacing with the mask being taken away. 000. Konohagakure. Training grounds. 000. Naruto slammed his fist into the training dummy, shattering its frail straw form. That was the fourth one he had destroyed and he had only started to sweat. The night training was something he had begun recently. In addition to the rest, it mainly served as a stress reliever. Regardless of how supportive his family was, being stuck as a genin for 7 years was frustrating. He knew he had to be patient, that his situation was delicate as a Jinchuriki, but it still bothered him. How much longer would he have to wait until he could finally show his potential? Naruto stood there for a moment, collecting himself. He still wore a similar uniform to when he was younger, the standard Konoha outfit sans the vest. Since then he had added a pair of fingerless gloves that he felt comfortable in while training. Right when he was going to call it a night and return home, there was a flash of red in a nearby training ground that caught his attention. Was someone using Kaden? He was decidedly curious and went in search of the person using the adjacent grounds. Fire release had always interested him since Hiruzen told him stories of the Sarutobi and their impressive use of the element. Thinking he could learn a thing or two, Naruto didn't think of much else other than observing the jutsu in action. When he arrived, it was a bit hard to make out the person, but he realized it was a woman relatively quickly because of her slender figure. With the moonlight aiding him, Naruto watched her stand on the water and do a few simple taijutsu stances to stretch. She wore the standard Konohagakure uniform, but her shirt and pants clung tightly to her figure rather than the normal, loose attire. On her hands she too wore fingerless gloves, but they had metal plates on the back. At a certain point along her sandals, bandaged adorned them and covered most of her lower leg. What stood out the most was her long, silver hair that seemed to capture all the light. It seemed to shine on its own. Naruto had never seen anything like it before. Needless to say, Naruto was a bit smitten. He watched her for a time from the forest, not sure who she was or what was on her mind. No, he was content just to watch, ensnared by her graceful movements and deadly strikes. So much was he preoccupied that when he realized how much time had passed, he stumbled to head home. As her observer left in a hurry, Kakashi turned to see if she could catch a glimpse. Other than a bit of his blonde hair, Naruto Uzumaki had eluded her. She had noticed him watching her from the start but didn't see any harm with it. In fact, she found it somewhat flattering someone took interest in her training, even if it was just a genin. Hopefully he learned something other than how to stalk a woman, she thought as a joke. Perhaps I'll have the challenge of teaching him one day. Kakashi wondered for a moment before returning to her training. She needed to be ready to meet the genin tomorrow. There wouldn't be any mercy thanks to her refreshing training experience that night. A group of thugs traveled along one of the many dirt roads that connected the Land of Fire's cities and villages. They were a disgusting lot. Dirt caked their faces and dried blood covered their ripped garments. Some of them were Nuke Nin, runaway ninja that had forsaken, or been forsaken, by their home village. Not even they had a shred of honor left, choosing to use their techniques for greed rather than for the greater good. They had just recently come from raiding a nearby town for foodstuffs, their packs now full. A few of the townspeople put up a fight, but the blood made it clear what the outcome was. It seemed that they had been making an enemy out of the surrounding region and were planning to leave soon to avoid the authorities. Unfortunately for them, it was too late to escape. The sun beat down harshly on the band of renegades, no trees were around to cover them. All around were rolling hills and grassland, save for the bandits, whom only served as a mark of shame. The place was beautiful. They passed by a thicket of berry bushes on their route. Having heard that the local cuisine was made with the berries as a main part of the recipe, a couple of them decided to pick a few for the road ahead. The main group paid them no heed and continued on the way. That disregard for their surroundings and fellow bandits would be their downfall, as none of them noticed the two get roughly dragged into the bushes. Two shadows leapt from the leafy cover in pursuit of the main group as blood began to seep onto the main road. Only one of the Nuke Nin were able to pick up on anything before the ambush began, but by then it was too late. When the vanguard of their little caravan passed a certain marker, the explosive tags that were hidden in the dirt exploded, killing at least 3 and sending the rest of them flying back. They were slow to recover from the blast, too slow. Picking on the weak had made them weak. One of the shadows landed amidst the group and swung his arms wide. Blood went flying as the chakra-enhanced blade cut through those in range and scattered the others who were too afraid to fight. The supposed leader, a shaggy man whose bald head was covered in scars and his arm adorned with a crossed-out Suna Hitai, tried to organize a defense and pulled together those who remained. Before they could get far, the second shadow made their presence known. They were not as flashy as their partner, however, and chose to keep a certain distance. The attack was no less deadly. Futon. Swiren Repu. A dozen kunai were let loose from what felt like all directions, each seemed to have its own target. The leader was able to escape the attack only to see the blade turn in direction and follow him. Having never seen such a technique, he panicked and put all his efforts in dodging the lethal blade. What this caused him to miss was the first shadow, now revealing themselves to be a Konoha shinobi, finishing off the rest of his men. How could something like this happen? The ex-Suna shinobi again rolled out of the way, but the kunai was close behind. Looks like your luck has run out, pal. Before he could even turn around, the bandit was impaled by a blade of wind. Asuma watched as the final enemy slumped to the ground, having fallen to his flying swallow taijutsu. The kunai that had been targeting the leader fell harmlessly to the ground as Naruto's technique ended. The blonde revealed himself from a nearby depression in the ground where he had stayed hidden. Even with his distance, Naruto had scored 4 hits with his technique and had successfully distracted the leader. Not bad, Naruto. I was expecting more though. I win again. Asuma bragged about his victory even though they both achieved roughly the same amount of kills. Naruto dusted himself off from lying low in the grass. His blue pants would have stained if he remained any longer. Not one to be so concerned about simple numbers, the whiskered Genin shrugged. If you count the explosive tag ambush, which was my idea, then we got the same amount of kills. Suddenly his brother did not seem as confident, and it made Naruto laugh. That light-hearted competition was what kept Naruto going after what seemed like the 100th C-rank mission dealing with a bunch of pitiful bandits. He was so tired of remaining stationary while everyone around him had progressed. Naruto had personally witnessed 2 classes of Genin progress to Chunin, some of them were even held back. Asuma wiped his brow. The sun was particularly harsh that afternoon. He saw his brother was not as concerned with only a mesh shirt and pants on. The faster they finished up getting rid of the bodies, the sooner they could head home. Come on, Naruto, give me a hand with collecting the bodies. Remember, we are supposed to see Hiruzen by sundown. With a grumbled affirmative, they gathered up the majority of the bandits in a pile and set fire to the bodies. There was no reason to waste energy to take them to some morgue, and they did not deserve the cost of burial. It was much easier just to give them an impromptu send-off with a Kaden technique, which Asuma provided. The missing nin were a different story, however, as they had active bounties on their heads. All Junin had a bingo book on them, which allowed Asuma a unique chance to reap the rewards of the situation. With a nice bonus awaiting them as long as they brought the bodies back, Asuma brought out a scroll and quickly sealed them away. Now that nasty business was over, the duo could return home. Since the mission was not all that taxing and they were relatively close to Konoha already, the two decided to just enjoy the walk home. It might very well be the last mission they share together, after all. 000. Konohagakure. Hokage's office. 000. Hiruzen was just finishing up the last of the day's paperwork when his last appointments for the day walked in. A smile came over his worn face as he saw his son and Naruto return safely. When they requested to be given one more mission together, he was unsure of which one to give them, and felt a bit uneasy when Naruto picked another combat-oriented C rank. It seemed that the trip together made whatever the risk was worth it, as neither had lost their smile they set out with. Asuma, Naruto, I hope things went well. The Junin nodded and placed a scroll on the Hokage's desk for his safekeeping. Curious, he waited for a proper explanation as he examined the seal placed on the beige fabric. We eliminated the bandit party as asked without any complications. Among them there were a few nuke nin that had outstanding bounties in the bingo book, so we made sure to collect the bodies. Now he understood the situation. It was fortunate the two made such a strong duo. Regardless of their rank, any nuke nin was worth being cautious over. Very well then, after the bounties are totaled and collected you will receive a bonus. Nice work, both of you. They bowed but chose to stay as they felt there was more to be said. The Sandaime lost his smile as it was replaced with a mixed frown. On the one hand, the news he had to give them was positive, and it had to do with the long overdue promotion of the 15-year-old Genin. The other side of the coin meant that Naruto would no longer be able to go on missions with Asuma, as the Junin had a team of his own to look after. It had all already been decided upon, in fact they had already been acquainted. Shortly before the two set out on the mission, Teams 7, 8, and 10 were announced. Subsequently, the Genin were able to meet their chosen Junin and get to know about one another. It was an important team-building exercise that preceded the official test to see whether they would either pass or return to the academy. As the location and details of that test were unique to each team leader, Asuma chose to put it off. Naruto. The blonde took a deep breath. An odd surge of anxiety flowed through him in anticipation. The council can no longer delay your opportunity to become a Chunin. Very soon, you will be put through a unique test that very few Genin have ever been put through to see if you are Chunin material. Asuma placed a proud hand on his little brother's shoulder. They shared a smile. All the times he had been delayed seemed to slip out of Naruto's mind as he took in that moment. Now in most cases you would go through the Chunin exams to receive an opportunity for review. However, your case is unique in the fact that you have waited so long and have displayed many Chunin-like qualities already. You need something more immediate, more direct to test your potential. That was not what either of them had been expecting, as they thought with the close-at-hand Chunin exams he would be participating. Naruto was happy he would not have to wait much longer, but all the preparation and study he did around the exams seemed to be wasted now. He hoped whatever the challenge was, it was something he already knew how to do. Hiruzen said it was direct, maybe it would be another mission. You will receive more details tomorrow when the council and I present you with the test, but suffice it to say that it will be in mission format. There will also be a team that will go with you, a Junin along with 3 Genin. Hokage-sama, you don't mean. Hiruzen knew where Asuma's train of thought was going, but he was wrong if he thought it would be his team. No, for something so delicate as this situation he needed a finer touch. No, Asuma, I don't mean your team 10. That gave the younger man a short pause before another name came to mind, but it too was wrong. Kurenai. No, Asuma. That left only one clear option, and to be honest, Asuma was not that surprised. The fact alone he chose her meant how important this must have been. Kakashi. He muttered, receiving a nod from Hiruzen. The silver-haired Junin had already passed her team of Genin a few days prior. It was reason enough to be interested, considering it was her first team she passed. That alone told the Sandaime there was something special in the latest group, but he also had reason to believe that Kakashi and Naruto had already met. With luck, they would fit together well and perhaps form a better relationship after the mission. They would have to if Hiruzen's plan was to continue to work. Naruto for his part had still not identified the silver-haired Junin he had watched train around a year ago. Out of embarrassment he refused to ask Asuma or Kurenai if they knew who she was. Having to explain how he came to meet Kakashi would have been awkward enough. That was why he was unable to see the significance in her name, although it was enough for him to know that he would not be working with Asuma or Kurenai on the mission. So, when should I report to the mission center? Naruto asked, hoping to move the conversation along. Noon. The council and I should be ready by then, and your team should also be there. Be sure to bring your equipment with you. There is no telling whether you will have enough time to return home and get it. Naruto nodded and then bowed, excusing himself. He wanted the rest of the night to mentally and physically prepare himself for what could be the most important mission he would participate in to date. It did make him a bit nervous, the thought of being with a team, as he was so used to working only with Asuma, but he knew that it was better to learn now than later. Whoever this Kakashi was, he hoped they were strong. The 2 Sarutobi watched him leave before they continued the conversation, which made Asuma privy to what would be expected of the Genin. It was risky and dangerous, but with Kakashi there helping him, maybe Naruto could pull through with his life and a new rank. As the older brother, it was time to put his faith in Naruto's abilities. 000. Konohagakure. Mission Assignment Desk. 000. Kakashi was not happy with the arrangement she had been given. Shortly after she passed her first Genin team, which by all means was cause for celebration, she was told that she was requested for a new mission. Unable to refuse a request from the Hokage, she was put in charge of this so-called Chunin aptitude test the council had devised for some special Genin. Not only that, but she would not be made privy to the mission's details until the Genin arrived, who was already running later than she was. Hiruzen waited at his seat in the mission center with Kaharu and Homura at his flanks. They impatiently waited with Kakashi's Team 7 for Naruto to arrive. The Genin would never be late for something as important as his promotion without good reason, at least that was what the Sarutobi hoped. A loud banging on wood signaled that the Jinchuriki was running down the hall, allowing the Hokage to breathe a sigh of relief. The door slid open to reveal a huffing blonde boy, at least a head taller than the other 3 Genin present. It seemed Asuma had been with him until recently, as he brought the pungent scent of smoke with him. My apologies, Hokage-sama. Asuma-sensei had an important message for me to relay that I had to attend to. Don't worry, Naruto. Now that you are here, we will begin right away. Kakashi was still gaping in surprise that the genin she was to be testing was Naruto Uzumaki, the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. She always knew he was a special case when it came to village politics, but the Hokage never made any inclination to her that he was planning something so bold. Although they had seen each other on occasion, it was merely a passing glance. The two had yet to directly converse. She supposed that that would change today. Her team took in their fellow genin's appearance and were shocked to see how big he was in comparison to them. Just as they would expect from an older shinobi, he was tall and had a well-defined body. They could see through his mesh t-shirt and open black jacket. Like their sensei, he had fingerless gloves and a pair of blue pants, although they were considerably more loose. Bandages adorned his lower legs where the black sandals met pant leg, completing his outfit. What struck them the most was his appearance. Blonde hair and sun-kissed skin was not exactly common. If it wasn't for his Hittite, his bangs would surely cover his eyes. That wasn't mentioning his unique marks on his face, although the Inuzuka had something similar. Not only that, but there was some sort of aura that poured off of him. It wasn't exactly maturity, but it definitely told them that he was on another level than just another genin. If their sensei's vague explanation added anything, it was because he was basically a chunin already. Now then, as I am sure you all know that this situation is not normal. That is because this situation is very unique. Hiruzen chose his words carefully, as delicate would have fit much better. The mission we have for you is not just for Team 7, but also this genin here. You see, this is a test to see if Naruto has the capabilities required for that of a chunin. Hiruzen was addressing Team 7 as they were clearly the least informed. It will also be a valuable experience for all of you, and a dangerous one at that. Follow your sensei's judgment, rely on each other, and follow orders. Each one of them nodded, still confused about the situation at large. Naruto couldn't blame them, even he did not fully understand what was going on. As far as he could tell, this situation was highly unusual. Now that he had a moment, he could finally take in the fact that he was again in the presence of the silver-haired beauty he had spotted that time not so long ago. Her name was Kakashi, an oddly fitting name he thought as he took in her appearance. When he realized she was looking at him as well, Naruto quickly looked away and focused on the Hokage. Now then, for the mission itself. The Sandaime revealed a mission scroll and quickly undid the seal. It is a commission directly from the Land of Fire's government to deal with a large massing of bandits and nuke nin. Apparently they are causing quite a lot of trouble near our border with the Land of Rivers. Considering the details of the mission, it is appropriately B-ranked. Every one of their eyes widened upon hearing the mission's difficulty rating. Newly initiated genin being put into such a dangerous situation. Had the Hokage lost his mind? Kakashi held her tongue for the moment but made her discomfort clear by placing one hand on her hip and narrowing her eyes on the council. There was no doubt in her mind it was part of their political scheming to set Naruto up to fail with such a difficult mission. Team 7, take this time to introduce yourselves to your new partner. Naruto, you as well. Finally, it was time to meet the team he would be working with. None of them looked particularly spectacular, but Naruto had noticed that one had the Uchiha symbol on his back. Perhaps he was something of a prodigy, considering the way he acted. The first one to say their name was the Uchiha. He had dark black hair that seemed to take a shape of its own, properly framing his face with two distinct bangs. His dark eyes pierced Naruto in what he assumed was a way of sizing him up. A blue collar high top and white shorts made up his simple outfit. I'm Sasuke Uchiha. That was simple. I guess he is a man of few words. The pink-haired girl was next and she bowed slightly in respect. She wore a red dress with shorts underneath which did not seem all that appropriate for a ninja. In fact, she seemed particularly cheerful and oblivious to the world around her. she had been watching the Uchiha during the entire meeting. Her fair skin must have been something to be proud of, though, as he had heard Kurenai complain about the new Genin and their perfect complexions. I'm Sakura Haruno. A pleasure, Naruto-san. The last one seemed the most normal, if that were an appropriate term to use. He had simple head of brown hair that was cropped short, it seemed to complement his tanned skin. There was a charming, even mischievous tint to his brown eyes as they too scanned Naruto for weakness. His outfit was more utilitarian than the rest, a light green jacket with pockets and long, dark pants that gave him plenty of room to carry supplies and move comfortably. The name is Arata Sato, nice to meet ya. His lax tone got him a hit over the head from Sakura, who told him to respect his superiors. Naruto smiled. He had gone into his shinobi life as a loner. He had no expectations when it came to a team, so he supposed this match-up was better than nothing. Even if the Genin did not exist, Kakashi alone was enough to pique his interest. My name is Naruto Uzumaki, I hope we get along well. With introductions out of the way, Hiruzen took control of the conversation. He ordered Team 7 to prepare their belongings and say goodbye to their families. That allowed him to keep Kakashi and Naruto to give them a more in-depth look at the mission as well as the test itself. Before he could, though, Kakashi could not hold her tongue and immediately expressed her problems with the so-called challenge. Hokage-sama, although I respect your wish to properly challenge Naruto, a B-rank mission is too dangerous for my Genin squad. It is something that should be assigned to a group of Chunin instead. Everyone in the room sympathized with her belief, except for maybe the council. Blame it on their experience in the war, but even Genin were exposed to tough situations and were able to come out alive. I know what you mean, Kakashi, but neither I nor the council intend for your squad to be the main participants. It is up to Naruto, with your guidance and support, to prove himself capable by completing this mission. Besides, he hardened his face. Your Genin will not survive as shinobi if they cannot handle the rigors of real combat. Perhaps this is too much and too soon, but better they be under your care than alone and without guidance. Hokage-sama. Kakashi was surprised he was taking such a tough stance, it was not like him. I'm sorry, Kakashi, but our minds have been made up on the details of this mission for some time now. Please complete it with the best of your ability. Without waiting for an answer, he turned to Naruto. Your objectives for this mission are as follows: investigate the bandit operations and impede their activities in whatever way you see fit. Assassinate key figures and sabotage their operation in such a way they cannot recover. Finally, discover the core route which has caused such a large amount of bandits to gather in this area. Understood. Naruto nodded. It was much more elaborate than his past missions. The challenge was somewhat exciting. As for the test, Kakashi will be, in addition to actively participating in the mission with you, grading you on not only your abilities but your tactical mind and how you react to certain situations. At any time she has the right to fail you and pull you from the mission, in which you will return to Konoha without any chance of promotion. This is to ensure that, should you somehow become a danger to the well-being of her and her team, she has the ability to send you back. That made Naruto a bit nervous, but he was confident that he would still succeed. His training and the missions he undertook before that point were all leading up to this final encounter. Understood, Hokage-sama. Kakashi. She had been quiet during the briefing, no doubt trying to figure out how she could get Team 7 out of their predicament. Seeing none, she settled for pressing forward with obvious distaste. Understood, Hokage-sama. The same words as Naruto, but with a harsh undertone. Very well then, Naruto, you are dismissed. He bowed to the Hokage and turned to Kakashi, waiting for orders. Meet at the west gate after making your preparations, we will leave as soon as possible. With that, Naruto left the four shinobi alone to discuss even more about the test that went far beyond just a simple B rank. The council had more than just Naruto at stake in what they were trying to gain, after all. 000. Outskirts of Konohagakure. 000. Naruto leapt through the trees with Kakashi's Team 7, the Junin taking the lead. Since there was no civilian to attend to, the shinobi were free to move at full speed. It seemed that the faster they got there the better it would be, as they had yet to take a break. He would not have any problems keeping up, but there was some concern the others would not do so well. Sweat covered Sakura's brow and Arata lagged behind. Was this their first time outside the village? Sakura, are you alright? Naruto made it so that he was close to her now, timing their jumps together. The poor girl looked at him as if she would fall any minute. I'm fine, Naruto-san, don't worry. Are you sure? I can ask Kakashi to slow down. She waved his concerns off. If Sasuke could handle it, then so could she. The blonde looked up ahead and saw the Junin making great headway. He was sure they were far enough from the village they could slow down, if only a little bit. Before he could ask though, Kakashi stopped. The team quickly regrouped with her on a large tree branch. She looked over them for a moment and was disappointed to see that they were already exhausted. Not even Sasuke could hide the sweat and occasional pant. Naruto, on the other hand, displayed stamina that was expected of him without so much batting an eyelash at their speed. We have made it far enough from the village that we can move at a slower pace. If you get too tired, let the group know and we will take a break. At sundown we will make camp, understood? They chorused an affirmative before setting out again, this time at a manageable pace. Kakashi made note of Naruto's concern for his team as well as his observation of the surroundings. Every time she would glance back to check on the others, she would find his eyes wandering. Instead of daydreaming, he was checking their vulnerable spots as well as any oddities in their route. Sticking to the treetops had advantages other than natural cover. It was hard to have an ambush in a place that looked consistently the same. Just one oddly shaped leaf was enough to tip off an observant shinobi. During their trip, Naruto took the time to observe his teammates and try to discover their strengths and weaknesses. It was hard to do without seeing them in combat, but he was able to discern a few tidbits of information. After watching their mannerisms as well as habits, Naruto had quickly decided the Uchiha was the only one that any real combat potential. Though not to the same level as Naruto, he too kept an eye on his surroundings and always had his guard up. Sakura and Arata displayed none of this and seemed to be totally focused on the path ahead, their minds elsewhere. Naruto could surmise that her thoughts were on a particular boy in their party, but Arata was not as easy. Something about him made his skills and his personality hard to read, almost like a rogue. What Naruto didn't realize was that the Genin was thinking about their mission and the blonde Jinchuriki, whom he wanted to fight badly. There had yet to be a situation where he could truly show his skills, and a challenge like the older Genin seemed worthy enough. Arata thought that because Naruto was still a Genin, he was weak. He had no idea how wrong he was. As the sun lowered on their first of many days away from home, Kakashi brought them down into a forest clearing. There, she quickly gave orders to Sakura and Arata to find firewood and for Sasuke to help Naruto set up the camp. In the meantime, she would keep watch. After setting up the bedrolls for the team, Naruto and Sasuke created a fire pit. As they waited for the other two to return, Naruto caught Kakashi sitting in one of the trees nearby. Rather than watching for enemies or wild animals, she was reading some kind of book. His eyes told him it was of the Ika Ika series, something he never thought he would find in her hands. I wonder what Kakashi sees in those kinds of adult novels. Sakura and Arata shortly returned with bundles of wood in their hands. With Sasuke's help they quickly lit a fire as day turned to night. There was not much to say among one another, which made Naruto wonder if any of them were actually close friends from the academy. Kakashi remained in her treetop perch, leaving him alone with the young ones. So Naruto, how old are you? Arata suddenly asked, curious about their new teammate. Glad that someone broke the silence, Naruto sat with his legs crossed as he told them a bit about himself. Since they had never met him before, he was able to keep their attention. They were amazed to learn he had been going on missions for many years now, and inevitably it led to them asking about his skills. Not sure it is my place to say. I am being considered for Chunin rank though, that should tell you something. Urata and Sasuke weren't satisfied with that, they wanted more information. You have to have a specialty though. Something you are really good at. The brunette asked. His cocky smile belied his curiosity. I'm not really sure. I suppose it would be ninjutsu since I discovered my nature affinity. Still, I have had training with genjutsu and taijutsu too. You might call me a jack of all trades. His vague description kept them guessing, but it was enough to quiet them down. It was not long after that Kakashi reappeared in their midst, casting a sharp eye over her charges. She had been trying to come up with a proper plan with the information she had been given. The stakes of their mission were high, even without Naruto's promotion on the line. If she had to, she was willing to fail him just for the sake of the team returning safely. Her hope was that something like that would be unnecessary, but it never hurt to have a contingency. It is time to get some rest. Who wants to take first watch? As if he had been waiting the entire night for it, Naruto stood up and volunteered. I'll do it. Urata raised his hand and volunteered to take the next one. With that done, the Junin promptly retired while leaving Naruto in charge. The blonde ran up a tree, demonstrating his chakra control to the others, to find a proper place to stand guard. That left the three genin left around the fire with nothing to do, as none of them were particularly tired. Their conversation continued. It was too much for them to think of another subject. So what do you think about this mission, Sasuke? Urata asked his fellow, only to receive a grunt. Not what I was expecting, but I appreciate the challenge. Sakura looked at her crush and frowned. He seemed to forget the point of them being there. Sasuke-kun, this is a test for Naruto-san. I don't think we are supposed to do very much. She feigned sadness, but in reality she was glad to stay out of the fight. To think they would be going up against real opponents so soon after academy, it was more than a little scary. She could not believe that her two teammates were as calm as they were. Could they really handle a nuke nin on their own? From what the Hokage said, their mission would not be involving just simple bandits. The Uchiha looked at Sakura and glared. He was annoyed she was so content to sit back when it was finally a chance for them to shine. Why was he stuck with such a coward? Urata was not much better, but there was something about him that put Sasuke off. It was like he was hiding something, his real strength. Maybe this mission will be my opportunity to see what is so special about him. Urata was looking at Naruto, wondering what was so special about him that he got to be a Chunin candidate. Even if he was older and had more experience, he was still a genin like them. That told him that there was something holding the blonde back, whether it be skill or something else. That was why he wanted to fight Naruto, to learn more about him. I'm going to go talk to him. The boy said out loud before jumping up into the trees, leaving those two alone. Before Sakura even had a chance to revel in the moment, Sasuke rolled over in his bedroll and promptly fell asleep. Left alone, the pink-haired girl had no choice but to sleep as well. Before Urata even made it onto the same branch, Naruto was already watching him come up. He was clearly taking the watch more seriously than their sensei. What's the matter? Naruto asked plainly, not welcoming the interruption. I wanted to talk to you. You seemed uncomfortable during the team meeting, so I figured you volunteered to get away. What is the problem? Naruto was surprised Urata picked up on his discomfort. He was trying to hide it for the sake of the mission. At first he tried to play it off as nothing, to test the boy's observation. I like the quiet and I wanted to show Kakashi that I was willing to be a part of the team. Nothing special. Urata made himself at home, squatting down on the branch. He shook his head, not believing the story. Urata's childhood gave him a knack for reading people and he could see through the obvious lie. I think it's more than that. Even if you were nice to Sakura by asking if she was alright during the run, there was a lot of hesitation. You don't seem comfortable when you are a part of a team. So he saw through Naruto after all. If he could, there was no doubt Kakashi could as well. He was sure she would make a mental note to mark him off for that, he thought in annoyance. I was never on a Genin team of my own, so I'm a bit uncomfortable in this new environment. I've been so used to working as a duo with Asuma sensei that I feel like I am out of my element. Urata understood that feeling. New situations were always hard to adapt to at first. Funny you say that, I was the same way when we were assigned to Team 7. That got Naruto's attention. You see, Kakashi had to give us a test to see if we could stay as Genin or get sent back to the academy. It was a team-building exercise, but we didn't know that. We had to get a bell from her by lunch or else we would fail, so everyone decided to go off on their own. She picked us off easily. The Genin remembered the test with a frown, clearly unhappy with his performance. After my first failure, I caught onto the point of the test and decided I would use those two to win. I was able to convince them that we needed to work together. It worked so well they did not even question my reasons. You see, I was going to take a bell for myself and leave them to fend for themselves. That sounded a bit cruel when Naruto thought about it, but when he compared it to a real mission, it made a bit more sense. They distracted Kakashi while I made my move. The plan was going to go off without a hitch. I could easily grab one and retreat before the bell rang. But Kakashi saw through my plan and captured those two, forcing me to choose. It was then I realized that, as a team, you either succeed together or fail together. There were only two bells and I knew that even if I won, in the end I would lose anyway. So I chose to try and save them, and that is how we won. Kakashi was not testing them on their combat ability, she was testing them on their ability to work together. More than that, she was putting their morals on display for her to judge. Urata almost failed, but because he saw through the test, he was able to make the right decision barring his own moral code. That might have caught Kakashi off guard, she probably expected him to take a bell anyway. That was a risky move, to change your objective in the middle of the fight. It was also impressive. Urata just shook his head to Naruto's praise. No, I wasn't that amazing. If anything, the test just showed I was good at manipulating people to make up for my own shortcomings. But it did teach me something. The ultimate weapon is not an object, but other people. A good team can complete any mission, but it is only a good team if everyone understands what Kakashi was trying to teach. Maybe my explanation wasn't so good, but hopefully it helped. The serious atmosphere lifted as Urata scratched the back of his head, embarrassed. Naruto smiled, it had helped him. Suddenly he felt a lot more comfortable being a part of this team. His appreciation for them increased when he realized how they were going to help him become a Chunin after all. Thanks, it did help. You better get some rest though, we won't actually be near the land of rivers for another day or so. That means more running. Great. Urata's discomfort during the run wasn't faking, he really did not have the stamina for it. With a playful salute, the younger of them dropped back down to camp to return to his bedroll. He didn't notice the shadow that hugged Naruto's tree trunk. Nor did he realize that Kakashi was out of her bed. She had listened to the entire conversation, a smile growing under her mask. Kakashi wasn't expecting Urata to help Naruto much, so she was pleasantly surprised to hear that dialogue. Perhaps the mission would go better than she was expecting. 000. A couple of days later. Land of Fire, Land of Rivers border. 000. Stop here. Kakashi ordered them down into a clearing just a bit off from the main road. They were fast approaching the location of the supposed bandit camp. The team had been moving at a fair pace the entire morning to arrive at where they were now, and she knew there would be a fight ahead. Besides, there was something she needed to go over with Naruto. Take a break and prepare your weapons, we will begin the mission soon. The three Genin scattered a bit to make their own preparations while Kakashi waved the blonde over. He watched as she reached behind her back to fish something out of her pack. Her arm returned with a scroll in hand, it was their mission orders from Konoha. Naruto had read that team leaders often entrusted them with their second-in-command before the mission started, in case they fell in battle. That gave him an unsettled stomach to think that Kakashi might die. He knew it was possible, but still, the possibility just seemed so low there was no point in contemplating it. Take this, Naruto. In case we are separated or something happens to me, follow the instructions inside. Naruto took it without arguing, storing it in his waist pouch. There is a village not too far from here. We will investigate and see if we can find out where the bandits are. Kakashi didn't want to rush into anything, so she stuck with a cautious approach. The Genin fell in behind her as they continued forward through the trees. A bit of mist was covering the area, giving the start of their mission an eerie tone. Not long after leaving their rest spot, they came across a small village nestled into the surrounding forest. Even with their distance, they could hear sounds of conflict. Careful not to make too much of a fuss, Naruto and the others remained in the trees while Kakashi dashed across the rooftops to get a better look. She quickly returned to them with news that a small group of bandits were in town causing trouble. With no time to spare, the 5 shinobi made their way to the market district where the altercation was taking place. 000. Give us what you owe, old man. A scraggly bandit ordered, holding up a dagger to some graying merchant. They had been in that area for the past month or so and had begun gathering so-called protection money. All it was extortion of the populace. Their distance from Tani and Konoha made it difficult for them to get any help. The bandits knew it too, that was why they preyed on the border towns. Not this time. We won't be pushed around by the likes of you. The robes he wore made the middle-aged man look like he was wealthy, no doubt why they were hassling him. With the snap of his fingers, the other 2 bandits wrestled the merchant's arms behind his back. A toothy grin spread across his face as he approached, flicking the dagger between his hands and fingers. A few of the townspeople were watching from their homes. It was a perfect time to make an example. I'm gonna carve you up, pal. You picked the wrong group to mess with. Before he could get any closer, someone appeared behind him. The bandits holding the old man tried to warn their partner, but could do nothing but gape as blood soon covered the dirt road. Naruto twirled the kunai around in his hand before throwing it faster than the thugs could track. It impaled one right between the eyes, sending more blood flying and a body to the floor. The last one was quickly apprehended by Kakashi, who wanted to ensure they had someone left to interrogate. The 3 genin appeared shortly after the hostilities ended, surprised at how fast it was over. They were also taken aback at how coolly Naruto handled the bandits. It was like he didn't even hesitate to kill them. In a way, it was frightening. Thank you very much, Konoha-san. The rescued man bowed before quickly excusing himself. He wanted to get as far away from the coming battle as possible. It didn't take much before Kakashi had gotten the information she desired out of their prisoner. They left him for the town to handle on their own as they had bigger problems. Apparently the band of renegades was led by a man named Noroi, a man that did not hail from a village but knew ninjutsu of some kind. Apparently it was particularly vile in nature as even his men were afraid of him. The group of shinobi set out for the border where the camp was. A river with forest on either side signified the border between fire and river, with the bandit camp being inside of the other country. It was something that should have been handled by Tani shinobi, but apparently they were not aware of the gravity of the situation. There was also the possibility they were involved, or were too weak to properly handle whoever Noroi and his men were. Either way, it was up to Kakashi and Naruto to figure out how best to complete their mission. Without any information on Noroi's group or his abilities, they would remain in the dark. That was why they were having to do something so bold as direct reconnaissance. It won't be long now, keep your eyes open for enemies. Kakashi warned as they ran through the forest floor, the tree branches too high to access. Naruto was uncomfortable and it showed in his posture. The entire mission had been off since they made it to town. The people did not cooperate with their questions, the lowly thug captured without anything to keep him from talking, and now they were out in the open. He knew Kakashi wouldn't purposely leave them vulnerable, but if they kept going like that then they would be discovered. Any smart leader would have some sort of sentry, and Naruto could already see the river. If he could see that, then surely the bandits could see them. The tense atmosphere was palpable enough to cut with a knife. When Kakashi suddenly held up a fist to stop, he knew that it was already too late. That was when he sensed something on the team's flank and began going through hand signs. Futon. Datapa. A gust of wind launched from Naruto's palms, deflecting the projectiles that threatened the genin in the rear. Kakashi's attention turned to above them as at least a dozen of their enemies fell upon them from the trees, waiting in ambush. Among them was a bald man with a dark overcoat on. It somewhat reminded her of a doctor's lab coat but twisted. Just like they said, Kakashi and her brats have arrived. Get him, boys, take the leader alive. The rest don't matter. Kakashi readied a weapon as did the rest of them. Naruto prepared 2 kunai while the rest readied one in their hands. Sakura's body visibly shook with fear, and Sasuke's legs almost buckled. Team 7, Triangle Formation. Naruto, look after them while I handle the leader. The 3 genin got back to back while Naruto stayed nearby, even though he wanted so badly to charge into battle with Kakashi. He knew they would not stand a chance without him nearby and so he remained. Most of the bandits came after Naruto, leaving Kakashi for Noroi to fight. When they were just a few feet away from Naruto, he disappeared into a blur. Before the bandits even knew what was happening, he had already torn through their ranks with his weapons. Blood and bodies fell as the rest recovered, attacking Naruto with their blades, axes, and sickles. Using his speed to his advantage, the blonde kept them back and was able to outmaneuver them. While he distracted them, Urata came up with the idea to become long-range support. He stayed in formation but began to throw kunai and shuriken into the bandit group. What surprised them the most was that the weapons seemed to have a mind of their own, similar to Naruto's wind technique. How does a genin like him know how to do something like that? Naruto didn't understand it either as the bandits were forced to scatter. He didn't even go through any hand signs or focus any chakra. Urata made it look easy. Another group came at them from a different direction, forcing Naruto's attention elsewhere. To make room in his hands he put away the 2 kunai before going through more hand signs. Urata, throw more shuriken. Naruto ordered, surprising the boy. He, along with the help of Sakura, threw a handful of projectiles at the incoming bandits. Using a technique he had learned from the 3rd, Naruto exponentially increased their numbers. Shuriken Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. The flurry of metal became a barrage of steel as the weapons impacted, slaughtering the attackers. There was little time to rest as even more came out of the forest from hiding places. They seemed to have been waiting for a long time. Naruto clashed blades with the nearest one and realized that if they stayed for much longer, the genin would be overwhelmed. Already their triangle formation was scattered as each one fought for the